Have you ever lifted hundreds of pounds overhead repeatedly until your arms were ready to collapse? This sounds like a dangerous thing to do. Last we checked, there are important things in our head, and hundreds of pounds is definitely enough weight to crush it like a walnut. Or maybe a watermelon. That's probably the better analogy in this case. So putting ourselves in such a precarious position, is resistance training really a safe thing to do? From the outside looking in, resistance training or lifting may seem like a dangerous activity. After all, no other sport or hobby that I can think of involves loading up your body with hundreds of pounds and then moving in potentially compromising ways. As with all sports and training, there is an inherent degree of risk with resistance training. But how often do these lifting injuries actually occur? Despite the visually intimidating nature of lifting heavy weight, the rate of injury occurrence is actually very, very low for resistance trainers. Injuries are highest in team sports such as soccer, where for every 1,000 hours of participation, we're looking at, on average, 30 injuries. Injury rates are moderate in things like running and other aerobic exercise, where we're looking at 18 injuries per 1,000 hours of participation. For activity including cycling, walking, and resistance training, the injury rates are only 4 per 1,000 hours of participation. 4, last I checked, is less than 30. When we compare resistance training to soccer, or other activities for that matter, it's looking like one of the safest options available. But of course, injuries do still happen. This should be obvious, as there's literally risk of injury in doing absolutely nothing at all. A study compared a group of sedentary individuals, meaning that they were not active and did not move very regularly, both given an exercise routine and just not given any routine at all. That was the control group. The study lasted 12 months, and at the end they found that the rate of reported injury was actually identical in both the exercise and the no exercise group. Also, interestingly, the exercise group reported less pain than the non-exercise group. Therefore, moderate to vigorous exercise, when done properly, is about as dangerous as sitting on your couch. We can actually follow this train of thought a little bit further, looking into the well-documented evidence of negative side effects of sedentary lifestyle. A sedentary lifestyle leads to an increase in all-cause mortality. This includes things like cardiovascular risk, development of cancer risk, increased metabolic disease rates such as hypertension or diabetes mellitus, and also increased musculoskeletal complaints like knee, back, and shoulder pain. It's very interesting to see how living a sedentary lifestyle is actually associated with the musculoskeletal injuries such as low back pain, shoulder, and knee pain that people would associate usually with resistance training exercises. Given these well-known outcomes of a sedentary lifestyle, it could actually be argued that resistance training or lifting is actually safer than not resistance training. Of course, this low number of reported injury is largely because the participants studied were all given the proper education on things like form and appropriate weight choice. It is very easy to injure yourself in basically any activity whatsoever if you're doing it completely wrong. Most studies on weight training involve collegiate level athletes who all have basically every resource they need at their disposal to properly learn how to resistance train. The not so groundbreaking solution then is to learn. Our low backs are one of the most common sites of concern for amateur weightlifters. In my 28 years of life, I can say with confidence that humans normally stand upright. This is good because it allows free use of our arms in comparison to any other quadruped animal, but it does place compressive forces on our spine. Also, looking at the squat movement, our low back musculature works at something called a heavy mechanical disadvantage in order to lift up weight placed on our shoulders. This mechanical disadvantage does predispose us to back strain injuries as well as disc herniations. Low back pain is debilitating. It is the leading cause of global disability. It's literally why I have job security. In order to help prevent these kinds of strain and disc injuries, it's important that we always focus on core stabilization. I've already made an entire video on core stabilization in the prevention of low back pain, and you can see it up here. No, wait, I think it's... yeah, up here. No, that's wrong again. Proper bracing of the core helps to maintain a neutral spine, which in turn helps to prevent any injury from occurring. Also prone to injury with resistance training and all other sports are our shoulders. Our shoulders are the most mobile joints in our body and are therefore also the least stable. The stability of our shoulders is largely dependent on the rotator cuff musculature as well as the pec muscles. Any imbalance with the rotator cuff muscles or improper form, such as not stabilizing your scapula prior to a bench press, can predispose you to rotator cuff tears and injury. Therefore, it's important to warm these muscles up properly and proportionately to their size, and also put a lot of focus onto your form. And then there's everyone's least favorite and most concerning, knee pain. The knee is a very common site of injury because it is the connector between two very long levers of action. In plain terms, our leg bones are long and our knee needs to figure it out. The integrity and mechanics of our knee are largely based on the range of motion and capabilities of the joints above and below it, namely our ankles and our hips. In order to prevent further knee injury or aggravation, it makes a lot of sense to actually warm up your hips and ankle mobility prior to doing any kind of lower body workout. One of the best tips I can offer you is that if you are looking to get into resistance training or are concerned about someone who is, know that they are getting into a hobby or physical activity that is known for having some of the lowest rates of injury out of all sports. And also, resistance training in itself is a form of exercise which helps to decrease all of the risks associated with sedentary lifestyle. However, just like every other activity in the world, if done improperly, it does predispose you to injury. If you're like a good chunk of people getting into weightlifting for the first time, including myself once upon a time, you might be self-taught through videos you find on YouTube and observing others in the gym. Getting both your form and your workout plan checked by somebody who is experienced in the field, such as a CSCS or an evidence-based chiropractor or an exercise physiotherapist, will greatly help you in ways you might not even think it would. If you're looking into getting a personal trainer, be very wise in your selection. Anybody can just call themselves a personal trainer without having any kind of background in it. Stay away from large corporate gyms who hire anyone and look more to personal referrals or Google reviews or levels of education. And if you have injured yourself through resistance training, don't push through the pain. Get yourself assessed by a healthcare provider that can help you. An evidence-based chiro can assess why the pain is happening and help you make modifications to your form to make sure that it doesn't come back. The last thing I'll say before I sign off is that if you've ever had a healthcare practitioner tell you that you cannot do whatever form of exercise for whatever reason, unless you've had some very extensive levels of surgery, get a second opinion. If one of your hobbies is resistance training and it's been taken away through the form of pain or disability, and then having some form of authority tell you to no longer do those things that you love, get a second opinion. It is possible that you shouldn't be doing these exercises, but there's also a damn good chance that with some modifications, it could still be possible. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it. You can click below to subscribe. It helps me out a lot. You can click here for the previous video, and you can click here for the next one. Have yourselves great days.